When Mega Man X6 came out in late 2001, the gaming industry was in the middle of a generational shift. The PlayStation 2 had been on store shelves for a year, pulling attention towards 3D worlds and cinematic presentation. Yet Capcom decided to push out another side-scrolling action platformer on the original PlayStation. The story behind this is well known in the retro community. Development was rushed and this was made in less than a year. The game was put together by a team working under pressure without the direct involvement of series creator Keiji Inafune, who originally intended for the franchise to end with the previous entry. Because of that production cycle, this game earned a negative reputation. If you look at standard reviews or forum threads, it is heavily criticized. It's called broken, unfair, a low point for a classic Capcom design. I don't necessarily disagree with that narrative, but I don't hate this game. I might even like it. I bought this game back in my 20s and I still have the original physical disc sitting in my collection today. Not because I like it so much, I was actually hoping somebody would have bought this by now. Anyway, looking back at it now from a neutral perspective, Mega Man X6 isn't a completely broken game, it's just, halfway broken. It's a title that contains some unique ideas but has unpolished level design choices and story choices. So let's take a look at it. The game picks up right after the ending of Mega Man X5. During that crisis, the space colony Eurasia was 86% destroyed. The debris crashed on Earth, damaging the planet, while the battle with Sigma left Zero torn apart. X assumed Zero had died, so he retrieved the Z-Saber to wield it in his honor. 3 weeks after the crash, the surface is polluted by the debris and an outbreak of the Sigma virus. Humans are forced to live underground, leaving the Reploids on the surface to try to make it livable again. With the world ravished, Maverick activity stopped for a bit. So the hunters shifted their focus to world restoration. The game says it's only been 3 weeks. Is that really somebody's version of things dying down? Were you having problems every week with Mavericks? Regardless, a former researcher named Gate explores the crash site. He finds a piece of debris containing Zero's DNA. It apparently corrupts him, fueling an obsession to launch a set of Maverick outbreaks. X is dispatched to check it out, and after destroying a mechanoid called D-1000, he sees a phantom that looks exactly like Zero. A Reploid named Hymax also appears, claiming he is hunting the Zero Nightmare. X and Max get into it, and Hymax basically calls X weak and leaves. Afterwards, another scientist named Isaac makes an announcement claiming that Zero's ghost is the mastermind behind this nightmare phenomenon, driving Reploids crazy. Isaac sends 8 nightmare investigators to the infected zones to delete the ghost, placing Hymax in charge of the mission. Isaac also asks for help, which causes volunteer Reploids to run directly into these hazard zones. X chooses to enter the suspected areas to research the virus and clear out the anomalies and rescue the volunteers. The game tells its story using static pictures and text boxes. While the Japanese cast delivers solid performances that remain intact on the Western release, the localization team did not do a good job. The script is filled with typos and bad grammar. One positive thing I can say about this game is that I like the lore behind the stage bosses. The Nightmare Investigators, as they're called, were all originally created by Gate in the past. When Gate found Zero's DNA and went mad, he used that power to bring all 8 of his old creations back from the dead and take revenge on the society that rejected him. Here's a look at a few of these Reploids and who they were before the events of the game. Commander Yamark was designed for environmental observation and forest preservation. During one of his missions, an incident caused a forest fire. While he wasn't officially blamed for it, Gates' rivals secretly sabotaged his flight navigation program during a routine maintenance check, causing Yamark to crash and die. Blizzard Wolfang was built for Arctic exploration. He was a Reploid who led the land development team. One day, his team was attacked by Mavericks. Wolfang successfully defeated the attackers, but his colleagues were killed in the crossfire. Gates' rivals used the casualties to frame Wolfang for the murders, and they tricked Alia into throwing him into the freezing sea to dispose of him. Shield Sheldon was built to be a bodyguard for the VIPs. During an assignment, the VIP he was protecting went Maverick. Sheldon did his job and stopped the threat, but because he killed a government official, Maverick hunters arrived and completely misunderstood the situation. They falsely accused Sheldon of being a Maverick himself. Overwhelmed by the shame of failing his mission, Sheldon took his own life. Rainy Turtloid was designed to explore areas with acid rain. The government looked at his armor and decided he was a security threat, ordering him to be destroyed simply because he was too durable. Gate refused to comply, not wanting to see his creator get punished on his behalf. Turtleoid willingly took himself out. The remaining 4 investigators met similar fates. Some were unfair, some were actually kind of justified, like Scaravage. He was kind of wilding out. But when you look at their backstories, you can start to understand why Gate hates the world so much. His colleagues were petty and the system was corrupt. Gate wanted to get revenge on the system, and that makes sense. And it does not need the Sigma virus plot at all. If anything, it hurts the story, not help it. In general, I'm tired of hearing about the Sigma virus. It would have been nice if they did away with it after X5. Also, there have been plenty of robots around Zero who didn't get affected directly by him, so Gate picking up that part just feels like lazy writing. The game also drops a major plot thread from X5. In the previous game, Sigma had an unknown benefactor who built his body. Sigma said this person knew X for a while and hated him. X6 doesn't touch on this at all. The person in question could have been Isaac. The game makes subtle hints that Isaac is Wily through his dialogue in Zero's cutscenes, but it never actually resolved that mystery. Then again, there's enough lore to backtrack from that too. You could say that the Sigma virus made Isaac obsessed with Zero like Sigma was in the last game. And because he is a scientist, he was now able to find out more about Zero than anybody else at the time. But I think we all could agree that for right now, Isaac was more than likely Wily, or at least had his consciousness. I want to go over a few things that I've noticed in some of the stages. I'm not going to be going over every single stage, just, a couple things here and there. First off, the Blaze Heatnik stage, that mechanical donut that you have to fight like 4 or 5 times. They could have easily just had you fight it twice at most and just had the other areas just be filled with regular enemies. Technically, this thing is a snake biting its own tail. Not 100% sure why they decided to make this look like that either, but once again, it is what it is. In the Amazon area, the praying mantis. Didn't really know this was killable until recently, but it is only killable with Yamark's weapon, so I guess that's pretty much why. In Turtoid stage, the acid rain is one of the biggest problems there. It basically makes you be on a time limit, especially when you get inside the little cave area right before you fight the boss. Don't know why it's raining on the inside of the cave, but hey, nightmare effect, I guess. The recycle lab would have been a lot more fun if it wasn't an auto scroller. I have come to the realization that I just don't like auto scrollers, and I'm not sure how many people actually do. I hate that the central lab totem poles are random. They can take you to one of 2 different areas, and if you don't get the area that you want to get, then you'll have to exit the stage and then come back until you actually do find the path you want. I also don't like how some of the upgrades are right beside each other. I mean, that's fine for Reploids. I mean, they shouldn't be floating in the air, mind you, but having a few of them by a heart or a capsule is cool. An example, this in Infinity stage is kind of annoying. You could have easily made people slide down this edge right here and find the heart right here, or in the North Pole area where you find the heart, the EX item in the same area. And the capsule's not far from here either. Why didn't they use this area? These spikes look like they were supposed to be breakable at some point. Going from the stages and talking about the bosses themselves, they're all fairly easy, especially if you fight them at level 1. They all still get stun locked too. None of them are actually worth talking about to me other than Wolfang, because he has a similar moveset from Sigma's Wolf back in X1. By the way, the levels go from level 1 to level 4. A sharp decline from level 96 in X5. At its core, Mega Man X6 plays exactly like Mega Man X4 and X5. It runs on the exact same engine, meaning the movement, physics, and dashing, wall jumping all feel identical. If you are used to the rhythm of the previous PlayStation titles, you will enjoy this game's mechanics as well. X still relies on his buster and special weapons, while Zero is built around close range Z-Saber combat and command inputs. However, one noticeable change is Zero's standard 3-hit combo. The animation and timing were altered, making his final swing slower than it was in previous games, which noticeably changes the rhythm of his close range combat. X's Z-Saber swing looks more like Zero's swing in X4 and X5. He does have Zero's old saber, so that would be a nice bit of detail if I thought they did that on purpose. And I don't. X6 also introduces some new features to the formula, primarily the alternate paths. Each of the 8 main stages contains a hidden route accessed by jumping into a blue portal. These paths offer a non-linear structure featuring a higher difficulty and a secret boss fight. Depending on your progression, the boss waiting for you in these portals change. The first time you enter the portal, you'll face Nightmare Zero. Defeating him is what unlocks the real Zero as a playable character. Also, once Nightmare Zero is defeated, the new path boss is High Max. If you defeat High Max, then these paths are occupied by Dynamo, a returning villain from X5. Dynamo is entirely optional, but fighting him serves as a farming method for Nightmare Souls, because he drops a large amount of them when you hit him with his weakness. Going back to Nightmare Zero, this story point could have been ironed out more. After you beat it, a cutscene triggers where the real Zero comes out of nowhere, claiming that he hid himself away while his systems automatically repaired. One way they could have explained his appearance is by simply saying that Zero had been tracking the Nightmare on his own, saw the fight happen, and that's why he ran into X afterwards. Honestly, Zero be lying. He told X he repaired himself, but when you go to an armor capsule with Zero later on in the game, he turns around and asks Dr. Light who actually repaired him. The writers couldn't even keep the story straight. Then again, this ain't even the first time Zero's dialogue lacked continuity. Back in the intro stage of Mega Man X4, Zero tells Iris that he came specifically to save her. He didn't even know she was out there. She wasn't mentioned at all in the cutscene prior to starting the stage. Anyway, when you visit a specific stage, it triggers a nightmare effect in other linked stages on the map. These effects add environmental hazards to the levels. Depending on what you trigger, you might have to navigate through pitch black darkness, heavy wind, or destroy iron blocks that block your path. It forces you to manage your route carefully, as you can accidentally make a difficult section even harder when you trigger a weather effect. Of course, you won't know this the first time you play. Also, if you leave a stage without beating the boss, you won't be able to destroy some of the nightmare effects, specifically the metal blocks. Every stage has its own effect, but they don't affect every stage. Example, the Weapon Center nightmare effect is Nightmare Dark, but it will only show in the Anami Temple and Amazon area. The other stages won't have a nightmare in effect if you go to them. So if you plan your route, you don't have to deal with the nightmare effects at all. I say that, but one of the problems here is that when you're on the screen select, it's supposed to let you know what nightmares are in effect by having the Maverick face be red, but that doesn't actually work. Once again, bad programming, not being able to polish the game, you get these type of bugs. There are also times where you need the nightmare in effect to help you find the alternate path. In Heatnik stage, a metal box can help X get to the higher path. In the recycle lab, you can use the blocks as another way to help you get past that large gap. And with the North Pole area, if you have the nightmare fire in effect, that will help break this wall. You don't see it happen though, it just becomes open. Would have been nice to see the fire actually break the wall so you know why it's open now, but overall I think it's great to have the nightmare effect not just be a hindrance. Each stage has 16 Reploids. Some are out in the open, while others are tucked away in tough platforming spots. Every Reploid you touch is beamed back to base, rewarding you with life refill, extra life, or an upgrade part. These parts can range from letting you jump higher to weapon energy savers. Another good concept, it gives you a reason to search the levels, explore the environment, and try to master the layouts. I don't mind backtracking myself because, I kind of like collectathons. The nightmare also manifests in stages as nightmare viruses. These are floating enemies that shoot projectiles across the screen. These viruses will also attempt to infect nearby Reploids that you are trying to save. If a nightmare virus manages to physically touch a Reploid before you can clear the roadblock, the Reploid is instantly corrupted. The name on your status screen switches to a red or purple block and it reads death or missing. I have mixed feelings about this. It's like I do and don't like the fact that not being able to save these Reploids is permanent. On one hand, I do like the fact that the robots getting affected by the nightmare is permanent because I don't think the game should be too easy. But on the other hand, I wish they at least gave you more time to get to some of these Reploids. There's too many situations right now where it's like, oh snap, the Reploid's right there and the nightmare is right beside him. And I also have this obstacle in front of me so I can't even get to him. Have you ever killed yourself in hopes of getting off the screen before the nightmare gets to the Reploid? Because I've done that a few times. Since there is no undo button, there is no stage restart that brings them back. Once a Reploid dies, on your save file, they are wiped from that playthrough. And if that specific Reploid happens to be carrying one of the customization parts, that part is locked away from you for the rest of the game. Defeating the nightmare virus drops a nightmare soul. You can use these souls to increase your hunter rank, which dictates how many parts can be equipped on your character at the stage select screen. A nightmare soul must be grabbed before the nightmare virus regenerates itself. If you let it respawn, killing it again gives you nothing until you change the active nightmare phenomenon. This system makes blind exploration difficult, but I have found that as long as you have even a little bit of the nightmare on screen, they will lock onto you instead of staying where they are, even if they are placed right beside a Reploid. There are multiple checkpoints in each stage, which seems helpful at first, but they have some checkpoints where if you don't have the correct gear or armor upgrades equipped, you're just stuck there and you have to take yourself out in order to restart the stage from the beginning. An example of this design is in the Recycle Lab stage. On your way to the alternate path, there's a large gap that you have to cross. If you are playing without upgrades, you cannot get over there. It would be fine if you could just backtrack back up where you came from, but you can't. So you have to jump off the edge and lose a life. Then you find out that there's a checkpoint right here. And since you still can't jump across the gap and the game won't let you exit a level unless you've beaten it already, your only option is to jump into oblivion until you get back to the map screen. The most well-known time this happens is when you face Hymax inside the alternate paths. If you enter the boss room with an unupgraded character, you cannot beat him. Firing X's charged shot will stun him, but that's it. I get why you wouldn't want Hymax to be beatable with base X, no upgrades, no nothing, because we just saw in the intro that he can't beat Hymax as he is currently. So it does make sense that X still can't beat him, but that's why making alternate path places where you can exit makes the most sense. You need to have a way to exit the stage without dying. Or maybe they could have just added a cutscene where X acknowledges he can't beat Hymax, so he just teleports out. Another simple option would be having a blue portal inside of the alternate path that puts you right back on the original path, allowing you to skip Hymax entirely and just go fight the investigator instead. Plus, you don't actually fight him naturally. As X, you have to stun him with a charge shot first, then follow it up with a special weapon to damage him. As Zero, you do the opposite. You use a technique first and then slash at him. But two of his techs actually stun and damage him. Once Hymax is at 25% health remaining, he will get into the middle of the screen and start shooting energy balls at you until one of y'all are defeated. It's a slow process, but if you can do it, you can start the final stages early. You also get a different cutscene depending on if you're X or Zero. Again, not a bad idea, but the execution of it was. Like in X5, Mega Man X6 features multiple armor sets. Because the events of this game pick up immediately after the crash, X start his journey with his in-game armor from the previous title fully equipped, the Falcon armor. It's cool to see him get his previous armor, but the Falcon armor is a significant downgrade compared to what it was in X5. In X5, the Falcon armor gave X the ability to fly freely in all 8 directions, which allowed you to bypass difficult platforming hazards. In X6, that's gone. It's been replaced with the basic air dash. Also, its charged buster shot has been nerfed down as well, losing the piercing properties it had. The game explains this away by stating that the armor was damaged during the final battle with Sigma. However, you can obtain 2 more armor sets in this game, the Blade armor and the Shadow armor. The Blade armor focuses more on mobility in close quarters combat. It upgrades X's Z-Saber Slash and gives you the Mach Dash. This ability lets you freeze in midair and dash rapidly in 4 different directions. It's highly effective for clearing wide gaps and bypassing traps. The Shadow Armor is a ninja-themed suit designed for pure utility. X can stick to the walls and he can stick to the ceiling and safely cross the instant death spikes, which completely changes how you'll approach the hazard-heavy level layouts. However, it cannot air dash, so it limits its horizontal mobility. It also replaces your standard buster with shurikens, and its charged shot is actually a powerful saber swing. Additionally, the game features 2 more secret armors, Ultimate Armor for X and Black Armor for Zero. Unlike the capsule programs, these are not found naturally during gameplay. Black Zero was supposed to be obtainable in the game by fighting level 4 Nightmare Zero, but that is impossible. Why is that? Well, bosses will only be at level 4 when the PA rank is achieved, which requires 5,000 Nightmare Souls. You will unlock the endgame when you collect 3,000 Nightmare Souls, meaning that fighting Zero, Nightmare, and High Max will no longer be possible, and the boss rooms will permanently be set to Dynamo. However you get to the end game, Gate calls out the hunters to drop the mask. He reveals that he's the mastermind behind the entire situation. Isaac, High Max, and the Nightmare Outbreak were all his doing, built completely from analyzing Zero's DNA. He formally challenges X and Zero to a duel inside his secret laboratory. The stages inside Gate's lab contain difficult level design choices. The development team ignored standard platforming balance and placed instant death spikes in almost every corridor. This actually is very similar to other Mega Man X games actually. I remember X2, X3 had the same problems. X4 kind of had the same problems too. Hey, you know what? X5 with the instant death lasers, yeah, they like a lot of instant death stuff. The worst part is that stage 1 and stage 2 both have 2 jumps that you have to make, but they can't be made with every single armor. Stage 1, for example, there's a wall that you have to jump over. You can't touch it because it got the instant death spikes on it. But base X, without having some type of part, he cannot get over that wall. In stage 2, there is a horizontal gap that you really need the air dash on. Ninja Armor X cannot complete this gap unless you do some type of glitch in the game. But that's obviously not how the developers intended for that to be completed. So once again, it's just bad game design. If you manage to survive the Spike Gauntlet, you take on Nightmare Mother and High Max before Gate. All 3 are a pain. Nightmare Mother is 2 robot eyes inside some blobs of DNA that take up most of the screen. You have to wait until they come out of the blobs before you can actually hit them. The High Max fight is the same concept, except now he has 2 barriers to attack with. If you break his barriers 5 times, he will switch tactics to throw energy balls at you until you defeat him. The battle with Gate changes standard combat logic. Gate is invulnerable to your standard weapons and primary buster shots. The only way to hurt him is to wait for him to throw out the color-coded energy orbs at you, manually shatter those orbs, and use the resulting blast fragments to deflect back to him. After Gate is defeated, he reveals that he revived Sigma as a desperate last resort. A halfway reconstructed Sigma materializes, destroys Gate, and retreats deeper into the laboratory. Before X and Zero rush down to stop him, they discover Isaac's body lying on the ground, completely lifeless. If you're playing as X, Ilya notes that his body is an empty shell, similar to the Erasure incident. But if you're playing as Zero, a mysterious echoing voice calls him the strongest robot near Isaac's corpse. Even though Sigma is incomplete, he's still pretty dangerous. His sprite continuously loops through green slime projectiles, vertical laser columns, and large energy blocks. I wouldn't call him harder than his other fights, but he's up there. After the dust finally settles and Sigma is destroyed, the game has 3 different endings depending on who you play as and which you unlocked. If you unlock Zero and beat the game as X, the hunters prove victorious and X manages to recover Gate's broken body from the wreckage, bringing it back to Ilya in hopes that she can repair him. If you finish the game with Zero, his specific ending is not as happy. He decides his body is too dangerous for the current era and chooses to seal himself away in a stasis capsule for 100 years of research. This serves as the bridge that eventually leads directly into the Mega Man Zero series. The last ending is if you never end up unlocking Zero. In this scenario, X returns to the final battle holding Gate's body. He is with Ilya and talking about Zero. Zero is actually alive and watching X from a distance. He chooses not to reveal himself, believing that X is strong enough to lead the hunters without him, and says he has some things to take care of before he can return. Maybe he's talking about Nightmare Zero since X never fights him. X looks around and says that he felt Zero, and Aelia says that she felt something too, but then 20 seconds later she's saying that X is talking crazy and needs to rest. You basically just said the exact same thing he said. Actually, never mind. Shifting to another positive of this game is the soundtrack. Even with the flaws weighing it down, a major reason why Mega Man X6 stage engaging is its audio presentation. The score, composed by Naoto Tanaka, features 32-bit synth rock. The tracks in this game, like X4 and 5, are good soundtracks. 3 tracks that stand out to me are the Amazon area, Blaze Heatnik stage, and Sigma's final form theme. The audio mixing is punchy and loud, nothing sounding out of place. Even on a rush schedule, Capcom's sound department produced solid work. This game does have strong core elements, nice sprites, good music, interesting lore. So the modern ROM hacking community has invested a lot of energy into fixing its flaws. The result of this effort is Mega Man X6 tweaks. It's a fan-made patch that cleans up most of the original code and gives you options to choose what you want to keep. It fixes the broken English translation, lets you start the game at 0, tones down the spawn rates of the nightmare virus, and adjusts the geometry and physics of Gates Laboratory so every single stage block can be cleared by every character variant, and a lot more. It strips away the bugs and other problems, giving us a more enjoyable game. Thinking about how the game could have been structured myself, I have my own thoughts on some improvements. For example, they really could have leaned further into the custom part system. Having to need certain parts to rescue out of reach Reploids is actually a good idea, just not for getting to the hidden areas to progress. I think you should be able to reach every hidden path as base X with no parts equipped. Reaching every single robot should be a point where you have to experiment with parts, different armors, and sub-weapons. Speaking of those rescued Reploids, they should have tied them directly to your hunter rank. Right now, it takes way too much grinding to get to rank UH. They should have either lowered the souls needed to reach it, or they should have made the rescue Reploids count towards ranking as well. Doing that would have helped give some of the Reploid collecting more meaning. They could have taken it a step further by using some of those Reploids to fix the Falcon armor. I really wish there was a built-in mechanic or quest line to let that armor get repaired back to what it originally was in X5. Imagine a system where you would give up the Falcon armor for a few stages to collect a certain amount of nightmare souls or rescue specific mechanical engineers who would help rebuild the Falcon armor's flight mechanics. It would have added a lot more layer of world building to exploration rather than just leaving you stuck with a broken version of it. It turns out that I'm not the only person who felt that way though, well, on some of this stuff. The fan community has actually taken some of these concepts and started building them from the ground up in a brand new PC project called Mega Man X Viral Nightmare. Developed in Game Maker Studio, Viral Nightmare isn't just a ROM hack. It is a reimagining of the game that addresses most of these design flaws. In this version, armor pieces can be worn as soon as you find them, allowing you to mix and match parts similar to X8. It completely reworks the progression system too. Instead of relying on rescues to drop parts, You now use collected nightmare souls as currency to buy custom parts directly from the shop. And now your hunter rank is now determined by the amount of Reploids you successfully rescue, giving the mechanic actual tangible meaning. If you have any interest in X6, I would strongly recommend that you check out the demo. As of this recording, they have finished the intro stage in 4 stages with X and 0 playable. In the next release, they will have the other 4 investigative stages available. Link is in the description for both the fan game and the tweaks. I may need to do a comparison between both one day. Going through this game again, I still don't think it's as bad as everyone else says. I mean, it's far from one of the worst games I've ever played. This game has added some new features. It has also brought back some old features. It has secret paths and bosses. It has upgraded the part system. It has 3 ways to get to the end game now. More armors, even though I only like the ultimate armor. But all in all, I really feel like the development team gave us the best they could. Maybe they should have dialed things back to give us some more polish. Maybe give us less Reploids to find and find better areas to hide items instead of bundling them together. And other small things like that. As far as the translating problem, they might not have had enough time, just period, for that. At the end of the day though, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. And that's the best way to end this. I think it's okay, but you might not like it, and I can definitely understand why. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you for making it this far. If you did like the video, please like, share, subscribe. It lets YouTube know that I make good videos, and it helps this small channel become a lot larger. I am hoping that I can get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the month, but we'll see what happens there. As far as my next video, I guess I should do X7, but hey man, I'm willing to listen to, you know, other suggestions. Maybe start off with the 0 series, do something else. Hey, feel free to leave a comment. If you haven't seen my other X videos yet, I suggest you start there. Check those out while I'm getting, you know, ready to come out with this next video. Or if you want to watch something different, then check out my Ristar video. One of my favorite games that was on the Sega Genesis. I'll see you in the next one.